Yo,
Yeah, we're having like every effing problem in the universe. I inherited that awesomeness.
Emily. The power went out. What are the chances? Hot mess central.
Okay. I don't take that pillow out of there. That's gross. Okay.
Yeah, we don't know where that pillow's been gone.
But we're not on backup. Okay. Get. My shit better not go out again. Yes, there's a little thing. It's a knob and it winds down.
So I need to make sure I'm actually looking at the camera
Yeah, I have to.
instead of myself. So
I'm the worst. Be a hot mess.
yeah, I'm trying to think of more stuff with mom and dad that's just really funny that they've done to us and didn't realize they did to us.
I don't know that it's funny necessarily.
I guess we
Would
can
our
laugh.
therapists agree that
Yeah,
it's funny?
we're financially stable now. We can laugh now. Um,
And I think that's really what it was. I think at the end of the day, like that was always their concern. It was just whatever life choices we were making, like how was it affecting our ability to have income? And so that's really what it was. I mean, even grown person over the age of 40, and it will still have mom like she is not thrilled that I do all the other things that I do when I'm not working in like my athletic career, like not thrilled that that's what I'm doing because there's a very high probability at some point that I'm going to get hurt, like very high, especially with what I do, and not a fan of that because getting hurt equals not being able to work and then therefore having an income problem. So that's definitely where that's kind of been like drilled into us over the years. So
yeah, I want to say that mom made a comment that it wasn't until after I got my current job that dad was finally able to like exhale when it came to not having to worry about us anymore. Like he just wanted to make sure that I got a job. I even remember I already had my job at LSU and I still had one interview left at UNLV and I wasn't going to like not go because I was like I want to go home and see my
yeah,
friends afterwards. And so I did the interview and I waited until like mom drove me all the way back to the house and I was like, "Oh, I got Brian on the phone and I was like, "Oh, I have a surprise. I have something to tell you." And mom turns around, she's like, "You're pregnant." And dad was like, "No, she got a job." Like he just knew that like if I was going to make an announcement like that, it was going to be about work. And then finally he like within 30 seconds he was like pulling up the real estate of Baton Rouge, looking at houses, and look at this and look at that and I was like, "Okay, thanks. I'll do that myself." But
yeah,
yeah, I think all parents probably go through that in their life, but I feel like with you and I, we both had those periods where it was like you were having kids. I went back to school and became a broke college kid again at 27, just to knowing that it would all work out in the end. And look at where
right.
we are. So speaking of
Yeah.
making mom mad, so she she does not like my hair color, so it's probably here to stay for a little while because when you're almost 40 and you can still make your mom mad about something like so trivial, it's entertaining when they're miles and miles away. And so
East
you
Coast
mentioned,
moms, what that is.
yeah. So you mentioned the athlete thing. So you made the decision to become a heavy athlete a couple years ago. Tell us all about that.
Oh my goodness. Um, yeah, that's an interesting story. Because that's kind of how I came up. I was an athlete all through high school, track and field. Um, kind of just had came in just kind of at the cusp of women being allowed to throw um, track and field style hammer at the high school level, and just happened to be in that spot where I was able to excel and That opened up doors to competing collegiately at the Division I level. Um, but had an interesting thing happen where we went to, I was on the junior elite, like the US junior elite track and field, not really a team, but just kind of a distinction that like the top 5 athletes in a category of sport get to go and train at the US Olympic Training Center. And I was actually there that I blew my knee out. I throwing definitely, it did something to my knee at the time, and they told me, the trainers there, they're like, well, we can't tell you what it is, but we're pretty sure you tore your MCL. And I was like, okay, and just kind of went on and went to UNLV, started throwing there, and just had problems from like day one, because it was very obvious that there was something wrong with my knee. They couldn't figure out what it was. I had a very interesting trainer or coach that made it very clear to me that he didn't like Americans, and that I was a terrible, lazy American. That didn't help things. So by the end of like my first like couple of seasons, so indoor and outdoor track and field seasons, I was just like so broken that I was just like, I'm done with this. Like, I'm not, like, I just can't do this anymore. So kind of left athletics. And then obviously met my husband, had kids. So I kind of took like a 20-year sabbatical in doing like anything athletic. And then we came here to Utah. I did like a little strength training and things in Hawaii, just trying to get back in shape, and had a trainer that told me that like, you have not lost like your muscle, like it's still there. You know, you just need to work on it. And I was like, yeah, okay. And it wasn't until we got here that I had heard of Scottish Heavy Athletics before. There was like they do have a festival in Hawaii enough, and they had published this thing in the paper where it like broke down all of the events, what they were. And that was the first time that I was like, oh, like, what is this? And then when I read it, I was like, this is cool. Like, mentally added that like as a bucket list thing, where it's like, you know, if I get the opportunity, like I'd like to, you know, try that once. So when we came to Utah, did not realize that that was actually like a big community here, and kind of saw it at one of the festivals that we happened to be at. And then I was like, okay, well, we'll sign up for a game. We'll see what happens. I'm probably going to die because I am so out of shape. I had to get permission to even like enter. And then when they found out I had a track and field background, they're like, oh, okay, well, you're not a novice, so we're going to put you into the next class up. So I was competing for the first time, not even as a novice, and came in like second place at the end of the day. And I was like, this is cool. And did have that awesome conversation with mom, like literally the day before the game. She calls me and she's like, Emily, your father and I don't feel like this is a good idea. And I'm like, yes, mom, I figured that was going to be the case. So totally tried to talk me out of it, did not listen. And so, yeah, so the rest is kind of history with that. Decided that was cool and I was good at it. So got a trainer and tried to get back in shape. Competed for a couple seasons, and then I totally had to take a break in 2019 when I started this job, because like I just could not figure out like that whole work-life balance thing and how to make it work. So it took me like a whole entire year to figure that out. But then also had the opportunity to train with my current coach, Ryan Stewart. He doesn't really ever have openings, and he happened to have an opening that came up, and he had posted it on Facebook, and I was like, I'm in. Like, you don't get too many opportunities to train with a former professional Highland gamer, been all over the world. So yeah, so I think that's kind of really when things took off, and from a training perspective and from a technique perspective, kind of everything came together, and was able to start competing at higher and higher levels. And then last year got my pro invite to Long's Peak, that has now opened other doors for throwing professionally, although it's been a little just rough with the pandemic. A lot of the big festivals that had pro athletes come in because they either had to cancel festivals, or they had to have kind of like really pared down festivals because of everything that was going on. They just don't have the budgets and funds to do those types of things. So trying to find pro opportunities for women is also a little bit of a struggle. But yeah, so I kind of do like, kind of like, it's almost like I live two lives because a lot of times the people that I like that I work with in my space, none of them know that I do that. It's like I'm by day I'm one thing and by nights and weekends I'm something else. And so it's interesting. But there is an article that's going to be getting ready to come out, a military and veteran publication where the editor, we're friends, we've been for a few years, and she was like, "Oh, I want this article on you and all your athletic stuff." And I'm like, ah, okay, so that's gonna be interesting because then like all of the people that I work with that work in that space are gonna be like, wait, what? What do you do? So that'll be interesting. That hasn't come out yet, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, so sometimes I feel like I live two very separate lives, and then after an especially crazy event where even as strong as I am, after 2 days of doing nothing but lifting and moving and all the things for like different events, and I feel like I'm literally going to die. Like I'm an 80-year-old woman, and then the next day have to go and like try to squat 300 something pounds. So it's just it's gets a little crazy some days. So
So I've told my students about what you did after I got back from Austin and the World Championship, and I showed them some videos and whatnot. And I was pretty much telling them that the ones that are interested in performance nutrition, that the world of heavy athletes is like an untapped resource, and
oh
that
yeah.
wherever you land, there's going to be folks that are doing this, and they may not say they want help, but they probably need help to be managing their intake with their output, as far as like, especially those competition days where you're just going back to back to back to back, and you don't really want to eat, you don't really want to drink that much because you don't want to be like full of liquid, throw it around. That's what I noticed. It didn't look like anyone was really, but the weird thing was, okay, so I said that, but then the weird thing, there were people drinking alcohol while they were competing. And so that was like a different side of it, to where I was like, okay, this girl got just shotgunned to Truly, and then she's going to go throw. So this is like the tailgating of sports. So it's like this combination of people who you can tell were like college football players, maybe
Yeah.
wrestlers, that still have that mindset. And then there's just the folks that are like, I got the size, I got the determination, and I know how to do it. And I don't really care if like my brain is functioning 100% if I do, like when I'm doing it, which I thought was really interesting.
That's the Scots for you. I mean, that was kind of like, that's always been a thing with the Highland Games, is that a lot of times like the festivals or celebrations. So for some people, it's not about how far we're throwing that day. It's more about the camaraderie and getting together
Mhm.
with your friends and getting really drunk and throwing heavy stuff sometimes. So there is that population, but then there's also like the other side of it where we're former college athletes and we're there to win. Like we're not messing around. Like I have not ever like I am not drinking alcohol when I'm competing at all, only because like I know myself, and like I have a hard enough time staying hydrated as it is, and so I'm always kind of running partially dehydrated anyway, so I'm not putting alcohol into my body because I will be a mess. Like it'll go straight to my head. But there are people that can do it, and there's a saying in kind of our world, it's like kind of fit, kind of fat. Like, yeah, we're athletes, but like we're not endurance athletes. we're we're not running marathons. We're not like, our cardio is not good. It's not something that we do. It's strength sports is like a whole animal in of itself. So it's like the Scottish heavy people, the stone lifters, the strong man people, like we're kind of all in that same category where cardio is not our friend always.
So what was it like being at the Arnold this year? Because I was like super jealous. I should have gone.
That was such an interesting environment and just such an interesting menagerie of people. It was like it was kind of like the same thing there. Like you could tell like you're super hardcore, like I have trained for this, my nutrition is perfect and everything is in line, and then other people who are kind of just there for funsies. So it really ran the gamut of things. But it was definitely interesting just walking around and seeing the people who were there to compete and the people who were there just to look really good in their tank tops and yoga pants. So it was interesting, but it was definitely a fun weekend. I didn't get around to do like half of the stuff that was there. I don't think I ever left the main convention area. There was supposed to be like another building that had another stage and some stuff, and I couldn't even tell you where it was. I never made it over to that part, but a lot of people, even though from what I heard, like the consensus was that it still hasn't gotten back to pre-COVID levels, but there was still a lot of people there. Interestingly enough, the part of the weekend that had the most people was like the last fight of the last round of the slap fighting champion.
I saw that. Oh,
It
that's
was
so
you
cool.
couldn't even walk in there. It was every aisle was just packed with people, and they were all just, if you could, there was a main stage, but then there was big like television things that were up, so you could see it even though you weren't near it necessarily, and it was just insanity. There was just so many people, and then like every time that there was a slap, they was just screaming. I thought I was going to leave there deaf. So it was it was interesting.
Yeah, I was watching just kind of through Instagram, they did like the preliminary round of like all the bodybuilding stuff, and it was like they kind of finished up with like the women's like bikini fitness, and then they brought in the slapping thing right afterwards, and even the athletes were like, "What is this?" And they're just backstage staring at people smacking each other. And Brian didn't believe me at first when I was like, "Oh, it's at the Arnold." He's like, "No, it's not." And then I showed him on Instagram, and he was like, "Wow." He's like,
It's
"They
a
really do
thing.
have everything there."
They do. It really ran the game. There was even like stage fighting, like medieval fighting, people in full on suits of armor fighting,
Isn't that what you used to
jousting.
do back in the day? Didn't you do something with stage fighting?
Oh no, that was back when I used to work for UNLV summer housing. Like
Oh yeah, they used to come
they
for
used
a
to
camp.
host that camp every year, so there was always like people sword fighting in the quad. Like that was it was just a thing. So it was just one of those things during the summer that all the sword fighting people came in. But yeah, it was just interesting, and it was kind of funny because it was the the Scottish events area. We were kind of off in the corner, and there was like a big like grandstand that was next to us, so like it had the potential for like a ton of people to be watching us all the time, but there was more people over the medieval sword fighting than there was watching the Highland Games, because I don't even know if people knew that like we were back in that corner. That stuff was a little bit more central, but it was just interesting to see like what the most popular things were. Like you would think like watching people throw like really heavy shit would be would
Yeah.
be like interesting, but nope, it was the slap fighting and the sword fighting. And
Oh, I wrote this down because I want to say you told me this a long time ago, and this is, you're gonna laugh at how stupid it is. So, is it true that when you were at UNLV, that professional golfer and Masters champion Adam Scott lived down the hall from you? The Australian golfer. He was on the golf team. I swear you told me this, and you were like, "Oh yeah, I know Adam. He lived down the hall."
I don't know if it was my hall,
Or he like in
but
the building or something with like in the residence hall that you were like, "Oh, I know him."
right. So like what was I in? Boyd Hall? There was it was like three buildings that were like interconnected. So like on the fourth floor, there was like three different fourth floors. So like I was in the middle building, and like a name I'm going to forget clearly. Like they lived in on the fourth floor of the other building, and there was a bunch of golfers on that floor on the golf team. So, but I don't specifically remember Scott. No, that was also pre-head injury day time. So there's some details of freshman and sophomore year that are a little fuzzy from that incident. So,
All right. So, what is one thing that you still really want to do with your life that you haven't been able to do yet?
I'd love to just be an athlete. Like that would be great if I didn't have to work and I could just train all day. But at the ripe age of 42 now, those days are quickly coming to an end. Coach has pretty much told me that. He's like, all right, yeah, your window is a little small. Yeah, I know. So yeah, so I'm just trying to I think I waited just a little bit too late to start my second act, I guess, so to speak, with the whole athletics thing. So yeah, it's one of those things where I really don't know. I'm just kind of along for the ride at this point. See what happens.
Funny story. Mom and dad said that if I ever got a tattoo, they wouldn't pay for school. And now I'm married to a tattoo artist. And dad's like obsessed with the fact that like he loves it. Like
It's
scared to death of needles, would never ever go near one, let alone go to the doctor to get a shot. But like when he and Brian are in the same room, they get like he gets all geeky, like art geek out. He's like, "Ooh, show me what you do on your iPad." And they just sit around and talk about guitars and art.
Yeah, I think when I think about it too, I think so much of everything that they worried about, or like everything was really
Well, if
kind
you
of
think
like,
about it, mom was a military brat, so to speak, and she was
yeah,
shuttled around a lot. And I don't think she wanted that for you or your kids. I think that's where her worries were coming from her childhood.
right. But I think just like maybe the culture that we grew up in, and that, and like dad pushing us to like you will not die in man, like you will get the hell out of here.
Yes. Yeah,
Like
mom.
that pushing, and like really kind of worrying about, I don't know, like the whole social norm things of, making sure that like we always had our shit together. I don't know like, how to describe it, but
Yeah.
like I think the things that they worried about then, now that they've left and they're
Yeah.
out and experiencing different things in different communities, I think it's allowed them to kind of to both come out of their shells over the years.
Yeah, I
So,
think a lot of it from what dad was telling me was that he felt that there were expectations from everyone around us of how we were supposed to act and how we were supposed to look. And the best way to make sure that no one's talking bad about you is to always do
to
everything
blend into
right.
the background. Yeah.
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 And so it's like if you're doing well in school, doing well in sports, oh, you're showing up to, church services every week, you're showing up and volunteering for the things and you're donating the money for the other things. And it's like no one's ever gonna be like, oh, the Patenodes, like eye roll. It was like he wanted to make sure that like he didn't have to deal with any drama. And then he kind of mentioned that now that they've left and he's been so separated from it that he actually apologized to me for putting us through that because he thought he was just maintaining our image. And he was like, if it was up to me, you would have had a choice of like if you ever even wanted to go to church. So he apologized to me because he totally understood why I changed my entire religion as an adult
Yeah.
because he was like, that wasn't me, that was the pressure
It
of
was, yeah, it was
a small
familial
town.
expectations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sort of
And
stuff.
yeah, so there was so much of that, I think, growing up, especially even like, well, we had to be at church, because if we weren't at church, then like people would be talking about us, like why were we at
Mhm.
church? And it was like, I don't think I ever just thought to like ask mom, like, who gives an F if we're not at church? Like,
Like we had
really?
to have a doctor's note to not go to church. That's what it felt
Yeah.
like.
But and I do think to some extent though it was true, because that was kind of just how, when you're in small towns like that, like how that, like the rumor mill, you know what I mean? Like I don't know, if you're not at church for a couple weeks, like maybe there's something going on with the Patenaude family or whatever. So I can totally see, where why it was a thing and
Yeah.
where it came from. But at the same time, it was also like kind of ridiculous and crazy. So
Well, I remember at my high school graduation. So for the viewers, Emily and I went to the same high school my parents went to that they met at in the 70s. And I was the last one to leave in 2001. And the graduation looks the same. And you kind of go through this walkway and you go through these trees. And as we were going down the hallway before mom was to go like sit in the audience, she looked at me and she goes, "If I ever come to one of these graduations ever again, I'm going to effing kill you." And that was like, in like to my face. And she was like, "Congratulations," and then like ran away. And I was just like, okay, I guess that's her blessing for me deciding to like move away from Rhode Island and go to school in North Carolina. Like, you never stopped me, but at least I know that's what you want me to do. You want me to get out. And so
yeah,
that's what we all did. And then
right.
eventually they did. So I just thought that, and it didn't feel like we were part of one of those small towns until you really get out and you see stories about other really small towns and you're like, "Ooh, they're weird." And then you stop and think about it and you're like, we grew up in a
Yeah.
weird environment like that too. Even at the time it didn't feel like it. I always thought we were like city kids, like, "Oh yeah, we're from Providence and like we're so close to Boston, da da da." And it's like, no, we were from a village. We
No,
literally lived
yeah.
in a village.
We lived in a village. And I think there is something to that too, that I don't like. If you're not from Manville, like trying to explain Manville and the mentality and just kind of that, like that history that's there to people, like they don't get
Yeah.
it. So if you're not an immigrant kid that lived in a mill village, like you can't explain that to people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's it,
Yeah.
it's interesting. So, and even within your own town, because you could be a Lincoln kid, but if you were a Manville kid, you really weren't a Lincoln kid. You were a man.
Yeah, I remember it was like everyone assumed we were low income because a majority of the area was low income. I always tell folks, I think mom and dad raised us to think that we were poor so that we would be humbled. Like they never gave us what we wanted. They always like made us kind of work for it. Like, and then when we had our
Right.
own money that you could have it, and then they just never alluded to their incomes
Right.
because they were doing pretty well for themselves when I was in high school and I was, home doing their laundry because they were working so much. But yeah, when people would be, "Oh, you're from Manville," it's like, "Oh, you're poor and you're stupid." And it was like, "Oh, okay." And then I remember Miss Robidoux, the English teacher, she was like, "Erin," she's like, "if you look at the list of all of the valedictorians of this high school for the past 40 years, a majority of them are from Manville." So she's like, "So that whole thing about like if you're not from Manville, you didn't go to like a good elementary school or you're not smart." She's like, "No, the Manville kids are actually the smart ones. It's just the bad seeds that are sprinkled in there make everybody else look good." That kind of thing.
Yeah, but there absolutely was that other side of the tracks mentality. Like I actually had somebody. I don't think I mean, it really didn't manifest itself until like junior high when you're then integrated with like everybody else from the town. That it was like, "Oh, well, you're from the other side of the tracks. Wait, what tracks? The tracks are
Yeah.
behind my house. Like I don't
Yeah. We
understand
live on
what
the
you're
train
talking
track.
about.
What
We
track?
live on the track. Like what? Like it just didn't make any sense to me. And like that was like that thing. It was like, "Oh, well, you must be an apartment kid." Like
Hmm.
what? Like what does that
And
even mean? Like,
yeah,
well,
like
you don't live in a house, but I
we
never thought
definitely
we
lived
lived
in
in
an
an
apartment.
apartment.
We
But
were
I never
definitely
felt like
apartment
that.
kids,
But I never felt like that
but
growing
we
up.
never called it that.
No. I
Until I was
mean,
older, I was like, "Oh, I did grow up. Maybe it was a condo." I didn't know what to call it. I was like, "It was a double decker," and a lot of people don't even know what that means. And I was like, "But we
right.
owned the whole thing," and then they're just kind of like, "What?" And then why did you only live on one floor? And I'm like, "Well, it's actually four floors."
But then, yeah, then they were like, "Well, like they didn't understand." Like, and I'm trying to explain, like, we live with my grandparents, and they're like, "Oh, they live with you?" I'm like, "Well, no, they have their own house, but it's just under us." Like,
It's just
I
on the
don't know.
first floor.
Yeah, on the first
Yeah,
floor,
there
but yeah,
definitely was some like hood respect that got put on Manville after a while. I remember randomly, like, there was, well, high school drama. Some girl thought I was like talking smack about her, and she was just like, "Oh, whatever, I'm gonna kick your ass, blah 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 blah." And then like she happens to be on the bus stop, and she sees me get off at the same bus stop as her boyfriend, and she goes, "Oh, I didn't know that you were from Manville." And I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "Oh, respect, like we're cool." And I was
You
like, "Well, one, I never
interested.
said anything about you because I have better things to do." And I was like, "And two, I guess people think we were like thugs. I don't even know. Like I mean, we definitely could fight because I definitely smacked a person or two around in my time, but like
Ugh.
I just thought it was funny how it was like, "Oh, respect, you're from Manville." So and then after a while it became like it was cool to be from Manville because of what it was like, and it was like, "No, it's just what it is."
Yeah, that's interesting. I only had an incident once, like in junior high, when this chick came up and decided she was just gonna like smack me across the face in the hallway. And I kind of just stood there like, what are you trying to do? And like nobody really messed with me again. But then I was also like super athletic in high school and very muscular. And I think people like assumed I was a lesbian and like they weren't gonna mess with me. So
Yeah.
I didn't have that problem because there is like that thing that like people don't leave Rhode Island, really. And then I was like, that can't really be a thing. But then like as we get older, just kind of looking at people that I'm connected to from back in the day, like they really don't. Like
Mhm.
there's so many people. Like it's there's not very many of us that have gotten out and have stayed out. So just it's interesting. And as much as I think like, yeah, it might have been nice to have raised my kids there and
In
had
that school
them
system.
in that school system, but then when I think about it, I'm just like, no, no, no. And yeah, it's just, and I remember like all of the people that used to give me like shit for, because I was always like the nerd because I actually like kind of sort of did school, even though it wasn't really my thing. But like, and they'd be like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Like, that's so stupid." And like, because obviously the two of us, or maybe more so me, like we didn't exactly live like the most greatest. Like we didn't go out to party. Like I never did. Like we were never allowed to really do anything. So like I think people just were like, why do you tolerate that? Why come you're never allowed to do anything? And it's like, okay, but like at the same point, as soon as like I graduate from here, like I'm gone. Like,
Yeah.
and I get to do what I want. And they're like, yeah, whatever. And that's exactly what happened. And like those same people that always would give me shit are the same people that are still there, are not necessarily doing well, like in very strange places in their life. And it's just like, you should have gotten the hell out of there when you had a chance. It's like, see some of the world
Yeah.
that exists outside of Lincoln and or Rhode Island.
Because some of them are
Crazy to me.
Lincoln cops now. Some of them are like state senators and state representatives, like
And
big
some
time
of
lawyers.
those names scared me. Like what? Wait, what is who
Yeah,
is doing what? We
thou
won't
shalt not say
say.
those
No,
names,
no.
but the type of folk where if when you find out they're now a state senator and you're like, that jackass?
Yeah.
Like that person was smart enough to go to law school, the person who would make fun of us for being nerdy, like that kind of thing. And it's like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting thing characters, but I think that's a whole episode in of itself is
Oh God.
Manville.
And the scary thing is like with the advent of social media, what people are finding this on the internet or what's being put up on the internet and then people sharing it, and there's like a whole group on there that's just for people that are from Manville and or Lincoln area that will post like historical facts that are like some cool, some kind of sad, and then just posting about like the day-to-day life and how it has not changed like at all.
No.
Like they're upset like when one this the restaurant closed. Like, oh, Lil and Jean's closed.
Yeah. Oh
Oh,
my
our
gosh.
lives are
The
over.
outrage
And now it's a new restaurant that they're all obsessed with, and they forgot about it. And
that we
so
have
they're
literally never eaten at one time because our parents would not allow us to ever go there to eat.
we were on their baseball team, and we did
Never
really
ate there
well,
once.
but we were not allowed to eat there because it was disgusting. But it was probably delicious.
It was no, it probably was, but yeah, it was just that it was like, well, no, we don't go to eat there, and we never really understood why. But
Yeah.
not that there was anything against Lil and Jeans because everybody loved it. But yeah,
Oh,
just
speaking of
weird
fish and
things.
chips, so now that we're on the topic, I'm reading House of Gucci, like the book, and I found out that Enrico Caruso was like this famous Italian opera singer
Okay, well that makes sense.
to
I
have
mean,
like
I
an
think we
Enrico
knew
Caruso
that
club.
like he must be like an important person, but I don't know that like we ever really understood what Enrico Caruso Club was. But then, of course, then mom would tell you, well, that's an Italian thing. We're not
Yeah.
Italian.
Well,
So,
one of them is, and they just don't want to admit it.
we'll never know.
We'll
Because
never know.
our family, again, another thing that could be a whole other,
Oh yeah, we
whole
should do a
other.
whole episode about your tracking down our family and all the lies.
And I don't think it was that. And I think if you look back on it with the lens of like kind of everything that was going on at, in those time periods where our families came to be in Rhode Island, I think it was all like protective factors. Like how do we maintain that status quo? Like how do we not draw attention to ourselves in any way, shape, or form? And yeah, so we're not Irish. We're Scottish because it's better to be Scottish than it is to be Irish. So that's what we're going to tell people. Like, I think that's really, at least in everything that I'm finding from trying to do like genealogy um, and that is like the stories that we were told are in like no way, shape, or form true. We're not really Scottish.
Yeah.
We are just French Canadian, really, at the end of the day. Um, it's just weird because it's like mom and dad isms, but like literally, it wasn't until I had to go back to Rhode Island for Uncle Richard's funeral that mom was like, "Well, my meme," and I was like, "What? What? What did you just say? What do you mean your meme?" And she's like, "My meme and Pepe." Since
Since
when did
when?
you have a meme and Pepe? She's like, always. I'm like, you have literally never
Mhm.
once mentioned that you had a meme and Pepe.
That was always like dad's side versus her side, and like dad's
Yeah,
side was
and
the French side, and her side was the Scottish side.
or the well, no, it was like the Irish,
Or what?
Scottish, Irish, and French, like French side. That's what we
Mhm.
were always told, that Grandpa was like French, not French Canadian French. But oh no, honey, like all the French Canadian French. So like it's just
Heavy
it's
in the cut.
crazy. And it's like there's just so much that like we just never talked about growing up. It's just crazy. So
And it's funny moving down here. I was like, wow, I moved down here. I could have gotten away with having my maiden name because everyone down here would be able to pronounce it. Since Louisiana is one of the few places that actually still speaks French, and it's like Cajun
right,
French, so
Cajun
it
French, but
sounds like the French we grew up with. That grew up well. We didn't speak it. They didn't
Right.
bother to teach us, but what was spoken around us, it sounds very similar. It just has like that Cajun like twang on it. And so, and it's funny like how growing up we would mix French words into our sentences, kind of like if we didn't know what to call it, we called it whatever someone called it in French. And so people do that here, and then when they do it, I just laugh because I know exactly what they're talking about and what they're referring to. It's really weird.
And that is weird because every once in a while, because that was actually the way that we were raised because of the household that we were in. We learned French words for things before we learned the English word for, so for the longest time, like that's what we called those things. So I have to like, if I'm just kind of talking to people, like every once in a while, I will forget that, who I'm talking to, and I'll go to say something and have to stop to think what the English word is because I know that they're not going to know, like if I pop off with papoons or like susoons or something,
Oh
like
yeah.
they're not going to know. Or even if I say like, well, my meme or like grandmeme or whatever, they're like going to be like, what the frick are you talking about? So it's interesting. And I think like even because we lived like in the bubble of like Northern Lincoln Elementary, like we were all French Canadian, so you could be like meme whatever, and like everybody knew what you were talking about, so it wasn't an issue until
Yeah.
you got to junior high. But like to this day I still do that where there'll be there'll be some words and I'll have the French word first, and then I have to stop and be like, English. And then like, oh, I didn't know that you spoke another language, and I'm like, I'm not, I don't speak Canuck in the slightest, but thing to me. I still struggle with that every once in a while because I'll be even at my nurse service event, I'm like, hey, grab that, bucket of siswas. Like, wait, what? And I'm like, oh, the binkies, grab the binkies. Like, yeah, so it happens. And and I think it's funny because I think we were not taught French for that same reason. Like they did not want us to have that skill because they didn't want us to like stay there. Like, there was no need for us to learn Canuck because we were not going to be around to use it. I feel like there was even resistance, like, when you have to pick a language in high school, it was like, well, obviously you're going to take French. And they're like, no, you're not going to take French. That is
I
something
took
you're
it in
not going to do.
college and I struggled because it was Parisian French.
Yeah, it's
And
not.
so I was getting everything wrong. And this woman was like, you're not speaking French. And I was like, you're not speaking French.
Yeah, it's not even the same. And even Meme would say that, like, she would get when she would give it like to money to all the charities, she would get all the brochures that were in French, and she's like, well, that's in French. It's like, I can read it, but she's like, I can't speak French. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You can't speak French?
Yeah.
Like, of course you speak French. And she's like, no, we don't speak French. That's Canuck. It's totally different. So yeah, but I think we were convinced not to take French. And their reasoning is that it wasn't going to translate, which it doesn't.
All right. Well, I'm going to wrap up. I have one last question because the world is dying to know.
oh, I know about
Where are
that.
my wedding photos?
Oh my gosh. Uh, they are on a drive, and like I struggle. So this is my thing. And if you know me and wanting to be a perfectionist with everything, like the lighting was not good, and then like that was a struggle. And then I have some really great there were some really great shots, but then with like just really weird people doing weird things in the background, and I'm like, like somebody like you were doing, I think it was when you guys were doing cake, and like there's somebody with like something like all like hanging like out of their mouth or something in the background, and I'm like, oh my god, I need to edit these. Like that was like my thing. I was trying to like figure out how I take these people out of the
Because you know I'm
background.
not going to like 90% of them. So you should just send
I just
them,
need
and
to
then we
put
can pick
them
out like,
on like a thumb drive, and yeah, because I was trying to like crop, because there was a lot of them, like I was doing a ton of cropping because like there was really cute shots, but then there would be like somebody weird like standing in the background doing something weird, picking their nose or like whatever it was, and I was just like mortified, like oh my god, like these are just terrible.
because I remember
So
when
I'll
you were
have to
taking
figure it
photos
out.
like the night before, like before we went to dinner or something. I remember Jonathan's girlfriend at the time was like, "Oh, it's family. I don't want to be in the picture." And I was like, "No, it's okay." So they're divorced already now, and I'm like, I should have told her no. It was funny
Well,
because when you were texting me from the Arnold weekend, we were driving back from the tattoo convention, and Brian's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, Emily's sending me pictures from the expo at the Arnold." And he goes, "Oh, really? She can send you pictures, but not our wedding photos."
oh,
And I was like, good
itch.
point.
Oh, that's crazy.